Rizalians! Today, I had the chance to talk with Dr. Monica Lakhwani, a Fulbright-Hays scholar and the First Language Access Coordinator for the Louisville Metro Government in Kentucky, USA. She also currently teaches English at the Jefferson Community and Technical College. She is a professional individual who continuously strives for inclusivity in communication. We talk about the ongoing cultural exchange project between the first-year college students at JCTC and our grade 12 UM students here at JRI Orani. I personally found our conversation really inspiring and learned how other people put much effort trying to overcome various communication barriers for the betterment of human connection. In this interview, we will be motivated to relate with more people, amplify their voices, and share their stories with our community. All of these magnified under the spotlight by the Rizalite. So here's the exchange. Hi, good morning from the Philippines, Dr. Lakhwani.
Good morning from Louisville, Kentucky, from the United States. Well, actually, it's evening here.
Oh yeah, good evening from there. Yes. Thank you so much for giving us your time, for accepting this invite and allowing this interview to happen. It is such an honor for me.
And for me too. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. It is our pleasure, honestly. So before we start, allow me to introduce myself first. I am Haidy Santos, a 12th grader here at Jose Rizal Institute, Orani. And I am under the STEM strand, which is the Science, Technology, Engineering, Mathematics strand. And I am also the editor-in-chief of the Rizalite, the official school publication of JRI Orani. And once again, it's nice to meet you, to talk to you here. It's my pleasure. Yeah. And let me just add that despite being a part of the STEM strand, I am very, very excited and beyond willing to learn more about you and about this program. And I am sure that it is just not me who's very interested about you. I am sure that our student community is also really excited to learn more about this activity and collaboration between JCTC and JRI. So will you please give us a brief background, an introduction about yourself?
I will be more than happy to. Again, thank you for having me, and thank you to JRI Orani, and also to Ezekiel Recto. I really appreciate the collaboration. I think I'll start with a little bit of an introduction. I was in the Philippines as a Fulbright-Hays scholar in 2022. Prior to that, my background has been 20 years in education itself, K through 12. I was the multicultural specialist for Jefferson County Public School District. I recently left that last year. I am currently serving as the Language Access Coordinator for the Mayor's Office for Immigrant Affairs. And I am also with Jefferson Community and Technical College. This is my 6th year there. I work with English learners, primarily adults, and I do the intermediate writing courses there. So in brief, in a nutshell, that's still my work. I also work with some of the other professors that are there, especially with workshops when it comes to English teaching and English learners. So this experience, this collaboration, I think it started with just having a colleague in the Philippines, Mr. Recto, and then staying in touch with him throughout the last couple of years, exchanging resources and sharing ideas. And I think one day we just said, how about if we do like a transnational experience, something that, your students can collaborate with my students on, something where it's a little bit more intentional, where we can start sharing the cultures and the food and the experience aspects between what happens and who, the people of the Philippines are, and then here in the United States and specifically in Louisville, Kentucky. So that's how the idea originally got started. After that, it kind of developed into how can we incorporate and embed what we're learning for the students into our courses? How can we take that and incorporate it in writing And then what can the students, get from it? What are those outcomes that they can walk away with, and what can they take from it? So that's how we got started. We were very excited about it when we started this. We know that there was a little bit of a gap between the level of the students, and between some of the nationalities that were coming into existence in my class here. But this is a pilot program. We're trying it out. We'll see how it goes. And so far, it's been very exciting.
Thank you so much for sharing that, the background about yourself and this program. But once again, before this interview, I did a brief, like a short research about what you do, and I saw there that you promote inclusivity in communication and connection. So that's really inspiring. So will you please share to us what inspired you to enter that field?
Enter the field that I'm in currently.
Yes.
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 For JCTC or for the mayor's
For
office?
this exchange programs between students internationally.
Yes. So I'm also a part of what's called the Star Scholars Network, and a lot of the work that they do is transnational. So they exchange a lot of information back and forth between countries and cultures. I think that's what got me started into the piece about connections and cultures. And I think going back to my, time in the Philippines and the educational institutions that I visited, a lot of that was missing, right? So I got to experience, I would say that I was privileged to experience a moment in the Philippines or weeks in the Philippines, whereas other educators were not able to do that. And I think that's the connection and the culture piece I feel that others need to hear about or they need to know. Our global world isn't as large as we think it is. I think if we stay connected to one another, we could really learn about the differences, the similarities, and we could build upon that, especially if we're looking at global competency skills in the 21st century, right? And I think that's what inspired me is the work that the Star Scholars do and the work, the transnational work that occurs with the members of that organization. That's one of the reasons I think that this is working for us. You have to have a willing partner, and it has to be a give or take on both sides. And I'm able to do that with Mr. Recto.
Wonderful. And that inspiration brought us this program that
Yes.
we are very, very excited to learn more about. So I guess it's time to start now to learn more about this.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So we understand that we have this exchange program titled Transnational Student Experience, exploring the U.S. and the Philippines. So will you please share to us how did your students react when they first knew about it?
So when my students first heard about the project, and when I shared with them what this was going to look like, what the exchange would be, I think a lot of them were not sure what to expect. The initial reaction was some excitement, but also some apprehension. They were not sure how others would see them. They were a little self-conscious about their own English levels, their own knowledge of the Philippines and the culture there. And then to be able to have that exchange with students who are also studying, right, in another world. I think a little apprehension comes with the not knowing piece of who these students are and who am I going to be paired with? Will I have anything in common with them, and what can we talk about? So those were our initial reactions from my students. I remember that when I first said, okay, we're going to write these letters, they all looked at me and said, I don't know them. And many of them were like, how do we start this letter? What are we going to say to them? So I think a lot of that had to do initially with the experience piece, right? Of not knowing, again, not knowing a culture, not knowing, who the students were, not knowing what to expect, and then also just making sure that they didn't say anything that was inappropriate. They wanted to make sure that, are we being polite? Are we being respectful? Can I say this? Can I ask this question? So those were the initial reactions my students had.
Before I ask on how it has been going on, can you please share to us, or can you walk us through the process on how this exchange is happening between the students?
Yes. So initially, what we did was we started out with exchange letters, just with the students introducing themselves to one another. And we were making sure that each student had a partner. We were formulating partners. We were making sure that the introductions were happening and they were able to share a little bit of information about Philippines culture. So some of the students talked about food. I know that many of the students there from JRI Orani were sending pictures in. But at that point, I think we needed to grow a little bit more. Some of the students were feeling like they wanted to connect on a little bit more regular level. And so we set up a WhatsApp group, which was also a huge surprise for some of my students. Some of them used WhatsApp, some of them did not use WhatsApp. I think WhatsApp is used mostly in international places, not as much in the United States. So it caught a lot of the students off guard. But once in the WhatsApp group, I had to push a little bit of the messaging so that people would get started and start writing. I think on my end, some of my students are still a little uncomfortable with WhatsApp, but they know that it's there. And they know that whatever messages they send, that it's there in that entire group. I remember a few of my students saying, my students are not on WhatsApp yet. So they had connected with that one partner that they were corresponding with and felt a little uncomfortable with the other partners that were also a part of the group, which is common. So we've done WhatsApp group, we've done exchange letters at this point. We have also had a Zoom meeting, and that was a little bit challenging. On our end, we had some self-conscious learners who were wondering what you all would think of what they looked like if they didn't have, their clothes on, their makeup on, their hair done. So we had some that were a little bit more self-conscious. What I learned was that here in the United States, they were a little bit more self-conscious of being online in Zoom than most of the counterparts in the Philippines. Or if, even if it was, another international Asian nation, I feel like they are more comfortable being on Zoom. Some of our meetings here on Zoom, many people turned their cameras off for a couple of reasons. One, for bandwidth, and then two, they just don't want to be seen. So I did find that as a cultural difference as well. But regardless of that, my students are still excited every time they get the letters. I didn't think that they would be, but this last week, when 11 of the students wrote letters and I handed those 11 letters out, the others were asking, where's mine? How come I didn't get mine? When you get mine, will you please, Dr. Lakhwani, please email them to me. So I can tell that internally, they're very excited to learn about another culture. Some of the students, when they get letters to say, you look beautiful, or I love the fact that you eat this food, because in this food, we also have something like this, here, and it's called adobo in Philippines. Those kinds of exchanges, to not know somebody and make those connections, I think is very crucial for all the students. I think it's necessary for them to make those transnational connections so that they can have a better understanding of various cultures and the diversity of students that exist, both here in the United States and even globally. I'm hoping that answered your question.
Yes, that's my figure actually. And speaking of the diversity that your students have been encountering since this program has started, what are the impacts to your students that you can see now that this program has been going on?
Sure. One of the most obvious impacts is the fact that they want to now travel. Students have been, either in Cuba or in places like Burundi or coming from West Africa. I've even got a student in there from Arab Emirates. Some of them have traveled to some nations, but now they are looking to broaden their horizon. Some of them want to visit the Philippines. Some of them did not know that there were beautiful beaches there until you all started writing about the beaches and until you all started sending pictures of them. And you have to understand, for my students who are coming from Cuba, and I'll just step back and share with you that our city, Louisville, Kentucky, has the second largest Cuban population. So when they arrive from Cuba, Miami is the largest for our Cuban population, and then Louisville, Kentucky is number 2. So it's Miami, Louisville, Kentucky, and then Las Vegas. So we have a very large Cuban population who is used to having beautiful weather, beautiful beaches. And so I think that's been the biggest impact is, one, they're learning geographically about the Philippines, and they're learning about things that are counterintuitive to what they've learned in social media or what's on media. So it's not this other Asian nation, it's not the othering, but it's more so of, these are the similarities. These are the things that we love. We're making connections with food. We're making connections with the weather. We're making connections with the beach. And the impact that I'm seeing is that they really want to travel. And they want to not just go to Europe, but they want to go to Asia too now. They want to get out there and learn. The other impact is also a historical one. Many of the students were not aware that the Philippines was colonized. And so they are learning that as well. And they're learning that some of the words include backgrounds and foundations in Spanish. So I think it's a win-win for them, because if they are expanding their knowledge, which they are not going to just get in a book, I think it's been very impactful for them. Definitely.
That's great. That's great. We've been hearing a lot of positive things about this program so far, but just like what you said earlier, you have encountered some challenges. And
Yes.
I am sure that during the planning, building, and of course the implementing of this program, you have encountered more problems. And one of the things that I'm curious about is that you said that most of your students are adult. Yeah, they're adult. They're the first
They're
students
adults.
there. And the participants here in JRI Orani are the grade 12 humanities students. So
Correct.
would you please share to us or elaborate to us, how did your students perceive the idea of them talking to high schoolers here in the
Correct.
Philippines?
So I'll just share with you that the students are anywhere between the ages of 18 and 45. And we're seeing older adults in college and in universities more and more. For the most part, the younger students, it was just a few years age difference. And so they're not really, I don't think they saw it as a very big deal. I think up to even 28, 29, 30, those students are okay with that. For the students who are like in my late 30s or in 40s, for them, they are surprisingly, just to me, just seeing it as, I have a friend in the Philippines. And I think that's wonderful, because I thought initially that they would see you all as maybe their daughters or their sons, but they are not seeing it like that. They're seeing it as, we have a friend in the Philippines, which is really nice. Really, really nice to see it like that. We have had some challenges. I know that you had questions on those. So every time I've either spoke to somebody in the Philippines or I have taught English there, the challenges have with technology have been on your side over there, right? So in the Philippines, I've always seen technical issues and bandwidth issues or connectivity issues. This was the first time that I was actually at my college and there was a technical issue and we were not able to get on Zoom and we were not able to join you all as often. So that was a reminder to me that technology and challenges could be anywhere at any time. and that connectivity issues are not just limited in a specific place or in a certain area. Sometimes I forget that certain institutions use specific platforms. So I know that for our college, we use Teams or we use WebEx, and that's not always the case. Some people use Blackboard or some people use Zoom. So we did have challenges with technology. We also have challenges with the fact that my students are older adults, and many of them are working full time and going to school full time. And so they're carrying a heavy load with the hours that they have. So just to keep that in mind as well.
It is nice to hear that your students view our students here as their friends here in the Philippines, because honestly, the feeling is mutual. I have friends who are the participants as well of this program, and they at first they were really very excited because they said that finally I'll have friends internationally, not just in the Philippines. I'll have friends from JCTC. So that's nice to hear. That's nice to know about your students. And another thing, regardless on how big and small the problems that you have encountered throughout this program, it's nice to hear that so far you are successfully managing it, and the program has been really successful.
Definitely. And I think I would love to be able to pair you all up with a high school next semester as well to see how that goes and if if the dynamics change.
Yeah, the students here would really love that. Yeah. And with those encounters and experiences, I can see that you are a very experienced professor when it comes to this kind of exchange programs. Have you in a similar exchange programs before? What are the things you were able to integrate into this one from the previous programs?
Sure. This type of transnational exchange is fairly new to me. This was
Oh,
the first time that I had actually done this, where the levels were not exactly the same, and it was done in a college setting. In the past, when I have taught middle school, I have done a middle school exchange before where students have written to each other, but it was more like newcomer middle school students writing to more of the mainstream middle school students. So I have done those exchanges. I've even done national exchanges before to where somebody, is teaching in another city. Their classes are having pen pals and student exchanges with mine. I've never done it to the extent where it's a completely different country and we're doing high school and college students. So this is a first that it's transnational like this, definitely.
and so far it is really successful.
So far, it
Uh,
has been very successful. I would love to have students from the Philippines in my class to be able to again connect with the Philippines, or I think in the future to even be able to connect with students from countries that are already in my courses. I think that would be a great thing to do down the road. But definitely, this has been a very good experience for both of us.
Speaking of our school, the students here, and earlier you mentioned about the Fulbright-Hays Seminars Abroad program. I was
Yes,
actually so thrilled when I first learned that you came here in our school last 2022.
yes.
So, will you please share to us the highlights of your visit? How did you find our province, Bataan, and our school?
So we visited quite a variety of schools there. I believe they were 16 institutions in various parts and various cities. Bataan, I felt very connected to for a couple of reasons. My father-in-law was stationed in the Philippines, and he was part of the military, and I never understood that I never understood the concept. I never could fathom or imagine that. I used to see pictures of him all the time, and I used to ask my husband, well, where is he? And my husband would be Philippines. And I would be like, where? And He honestly, I didn't even know where Bataan is. It didn't render in my head until I actually was there and visiting what was previous military sites. And I actually had a chance to take a picture there and send it back to my in-laws and say, this is where dad was and this is where I am. And I think just having that photo even reinforced it for the children because they were quite young when he was stationed. And these were in his earlier days before he was married or when he recently married. So he was in his 20s at the time. And it was good to be there, to be able to experience that. So Bataan is a place that I am not going to forget, not just because of the military, but because I was there to learn about the educational institutions as well. So it kind of fit personal goals with my professional goals. So I would love if I have the opportunity again, I definitely will be back. I'd love to be
Yeah,
able to see you all, see you in action, and maybe co-teach with Mr. Recto himself.
yeah, and we would love to have you again here in our school. But small
Thank
world,
you. It
right?
is a small world, yes, and it's a full circle. One thing I will mention that I know that you haven't had a chance to ask is this was the first transnational exchange for our college. And they actually did a published piece on it that went into the newsletter for the staff. So even there is not a link for others that I could share out, our staff newsletter was able to see that this exchange was happening and that I was very proud of it. And then we also did a write-up in Star Scholars Network so that they also learned about the transnational piece as well. So those were two things that happened on our end in the United States. We're trying to get it published in within the Fulbright newsletter as well. I'll be there at the conference the end of this month, so fingers crossed, and we can share this information out so that we can have more transnational exchanges in the future.
So this first program is actually so historic.
It's
You can
great,
actually
and
say that it's historic, yeah.
yeah, it's great. And I will tell you, when I was in the Philippines in 2022, I wasn't exactly sure, what the projects would look like and how I would do justice when I came back home. And at that time, I had already promised that I would come back and I would, share some resources out with my district and be able to share some curriculum guide out with my district. And I was able to do both of those. But I never thought that I would do those and then continue sharing my experience in the Philippines with other Fulbrighters. And I never thought that I would continue that. I will share, and I don't know if Mr. Recto knows or not, but we recently applied for a Fulbright grant and had a piloted program for about 6 weeks on language cafes in the city. And the language cafes were also based originally on my Fulbright Philippines experience. So in those cafes, we were able to offer community members various languages and language learning opportunities for adults and for students. So they could come in and learn, Filipino. They could come in and learn Spanish. They could come in and learn Arabic. And that got funded. And so even that, the foundation stemmed from my trip to the Philippines. So I'm very grateful and honored to have had that experience in the Philippines and grateful to the Philippines for just providing me a lot of knowledge base on the culture. I think when I was there, we even got specific cultural background for those refugees coming in from China and immigrants coming in from China, which I was able to weave into a lot of my programs. So this transnational experience with Mr. Recto, again, I didn't think that, this was going to happen when I was in there, in the Philippines in 2022. So I'm very grateful that we've been able to build upon my experiences in the Philippines and share that out here as much as possible. That's been a blessing.
Let me just go back to what you mentioned, the language cafe.
Yes,
May you please elaborate to us what or on how does language cafe work? Like, do you provide
sure.
materials?
So language cafes are non-academic. They are set at a certain date, a certain time. Individuals, community members can just walk into a cafe. They're designated immigrant-owned cafe shops, so it's benefiting our immigrants and our immigrant entrepreneurs. The facilitators who are facilitating the languages are also native speakers and immigrants. And so it is benefiting them as well, because again, it's increasing the economy, providing them with those opportunities of work. But community members can just come in. Let's say the cafe is at 4 p.m. at an Ethiopian coffee shop. Community members can come in. They can choose one of 3 or 4 languages to learn. They can have some Ethiopian tea and coffee. They can have some Ethiopian snacks. They can network. They can learn about different cultures. They can learn about each other, and they can pick up words and phrases in that language. So the way the coffee shops and the language cafes are organized, we had French, Spanish, and Arabic, for example. And you could come in, and for 30 minutes, you can learn French. If you decide you want to learn Spanish, you can switch to the Spanish table. If you decide you want to stay in Arabic, you can stay at the Arabic table. But it's a moment where you can, it's that hour or that hour and a half where you can meet and greet people, you can learn language, you can make friends, and you don't have to worry about the grades, you don't have to worry about the emphasis. So there's not a lot of stress. It's more like lay back. Community members are meeting other community members and learning about the different cultures and immigrants and refugees who are here in the city. So definitely loved the pilot. Was also funded by a Citizens Diplomacy Action Fund through Fulbright and through U.S. Global Exchange. And it not only was it successful, I now have a nonprofit partner in an organization that wants to continue it in the spring. So again, these are all parts of the national and transnational exchanges, correct? It's the ability to be able to come. And even that, I think, was an influence as to why I said yes with Mr. Recto, because at the cafes, high school students were, able to come. College students were able to come. And they were able to get along as friends and get to know one another. And that was another foundation for us when we thought, why not 12th grade with our first year college students? So it's been pivotal.
That's actually interesting. That's wonderful. Now, with those experiences, with your experience, with your visit here in the Philippines, with your experiences with the language cafes and the other programs, how has it been affecting you as a person who strives those inclusive communication and connection?
Very good question. I've been thinking about that myself lately. I would have to say that more recently, the students at JRI Orani have inspired me. When I talk to you all, see you on Zoom, I have students who are constantly asking me questions on WhatsApp. The first thing that comes to my mind is leadership. And in a way, in many ways, you all have inspired me into thinking, how can I get youth to be the leaders that they need to be? And what I've been thinking about is starting an international youth empowerment program for next year, to where some of those leadership skills that I see among the students in Mr. Recto's class, I would love to incorporate with our immigrant international youth here in high school, and to build their leadership as well. So it's impacted me in that sense. It's inspired me in that sense. And at the same time, I want to take it a step further and want to introduce those high school youth, not just with leadership skills, but also to the challenges that are in the communities that we have, and what can they do about it? What kind of projects can they do to share those challenges out? So maybe get them involved in learning about policies and government, get them involved in learning about education and the business industry, or even get them involved in learning about our nonprofits or other partnering organizations, so that they can shine as leaders and they can move forward. So a lot of that work has, and a lot of those thoughts have been impacted and inspired by the students in the Philippines, especially with this project.
That's lovely. Thank you so much for sharing that, Dr. Lakhwani. And we actually really hope for more of this kind of programs. Yeah, to of course integrate what you said, to make the students learn policies, to learn to teach them leadership, to find themselves more, and yeah, to integrate those things. I don't want to end this interview yet, but we're on the last part of our interview. For the last question, what do you wish to accomplish with this communication and connection between the
Sure.
JCTC students and the students here at JRI Orani? What do you want them to take away from this program?
I think the first thing that I would want them to embed in their lives is to meet different people, to start looking at people with a different perspective. Sometimes we stay in our own groups and circles, and we tend to stay in our own language or cultural groups, and we tend to become friends with them. We tend to look for them. So one of the things that I've shared with my students is, and I'm going to even share this with your students there, is to start thinking about who your neighbors are, who you hang out with, who are your friends, who your doctors are, who do you regularly visit. Look to the left of you, look to the right of you, who do you see? And if you're seeing the same person, then it's time to expand your horizons and start looking for other people, to start learning about other people, and to start having a different perspective as to how you see them. And I think that would be what I would want my students to take away, so that they are not always looking at what media portrays or how individuals are portrayed on TV, but to start expanding their kind of lives and their world, so that they are meeting people who are different and who have some similarities, and where they are learning about new foods and new cultures, and where they want to go and experience and travel new places. I think that's what I would want them to take away.
And I am sure that it will be a success. They will learn those things, and as well as our students here, they will learn those things, expanding their horizon, knowing more people, and
Yeah.
understanding more culture. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And then, I'm always here. If any of you ever need a reference or need to ask a question, you all know how to get a hold of me. I'm more than happy to assist.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Lakhwani.
Thank you.
much.
Thank you
Once
for this
again,
opportunity.
yeah, it is my honor to talk to you. Thank you so much for sitting down with us to talk more about this program. You inspired me, and I'm sure you will inspire more people who will watch this interview with you. Thank you so much.
I
And we
appreciate it,
hope,
Heidi.
yeah, we hope to see you again here at the Jerry
Definitely.
soon.
Anytime, anytime.